These are events that take place around about 40 years ago. I was about 6, nearly 7 at the time. Um, and so it was 1977, and basically myself, my brother, my mum and dad were sharing a house with my great grandfather. It was his house, so we used to share it. You know, he had a room upstairs, and we had the front room and bedrooms upstairs. So a bit of a half and half situation. Um, it was in the September of 1977. He suddenly dies of a heart attack. It wasn't expected, obviously. He hadn't been ill, so it was quite a big shock to the family at the time. Um, and so obviously there were all the normal things that had to be sorted out: funeral arrangements, financial things, possessions. He was quite a well-off man, um, and so I think a lot of the money that he had went into probate. So the family at the time really couldn't access a lot of his money. Um, and so basically, as part of this, my mum went through his belongings. He used to have like a glass wooden cabinet in his room that he used to use, with stuff in it like plates, ornaments, cups, that kind of thing. Nothing of real value, just sentimental stuff. And so basically, she took this whole thing apart. She cleaned it, and then basically she put everything back in. You know, she completely emptied it, cleaned everything. Everything went back in. There was nothing else in there that shouldn't have been there. Not long afterwards, my granddad, my dad's dad, comes down to the house, and him and my mum and dad are talking about, I think, the funeral arrangements, and they were talking. I think my granddad at the time was a little bit frustrated because he'd been talking to the bank and stuff, and obviously they confirmed that there was this money in probate and stuff. And he did mention about this bill, this electric bill that come up, which is around about £91. You know, £91 in 1977 is quite a bit of money. And so they were talking about this stuff, and they got talking about possessions. And my granddad said to me, said, "Oh, do you remember that glass that Dad used to have?" And basically, it was like a novelty glass. So it was like a glass, a drinking vessel. And basically there was a lady on the back, and she had a dress on, and then basically when you poured liquid into the glass, the dress would come down. My granddad mentioned to my dad that he would quite like to have this glass. So this glass had been in this cabinet that my mum had cleaned out. So my mum said, "Oh, I know which one you're talking about, I'll go and get it." So basically she goes into the room. She knows where the glass is because she'd done it a couple of days earlier. She goes to get the glass out of the cabinet, and then she notices something that wasn't there before. So it kind of looked like an oblong piece of paper. So she thought, that's quite strange. So she pulled it out, and basically it was an envelope. It was a sealed white envelope. So my mum's kind of like, where does this come from? Bearing in mind nobody else would have needed to go to that cabinet. Nobody else would have had access to the house. Obviously, me and my brother at that stage were quite young, so we wouldn't have done anything like that. So basically, my mum goes back in. They start chatting. She said, "Look, I've found this envelope. I don't know what it is." So basically, my granddad opened it up, and basically there was £100 in this envelope. Brand new notes, like you just got them from the bank. The really strange thing about the money was that the numbers on the notes were concurrent, which only really would happen if you went to the bank and, you know, the bank teller basically broke open new money and gave you that money. Otherwise, that wouldn't happen. You've got to think this is 1977. You would only get that. There's not really cash machines about. You would only get that money really by going to the bank and getting that money. And the fact that it was £100 as well, obviously my granddad had been talking about this bill that was £91. Bearing in mind my great granddad was well off, they've been talking about the fact that they can't access any money. My granddad basically sort of took it as a sign that this money had been given to him, and so he used that money to pay that bill. Now, you know, I think that's really strange. Like I said, there was no real way of that envelope getting there. There were only a couple of people that had access to the house. This is 1977, so that money isn't readily available. So I think that basically my great grandfather, in his own way, gave my granddad that money.